The Saints and the Bucs.
Ooh.
Very simple. Bucs win, they're in.
They're in.
They hold their own destiny. They also, if they win and the Rams lose,
yes,
Tampa gets the 3 seed.
3 seed.
So that obviously is pretty nice for them as well. The Rams are resting their starters, which again we'll get to in a little bit. Sort of strange, but I guess they're thinking more big picture stuff. But again, if the Rams lose and the Bucs win, they're going to end up getting the 3 seed, not just winning the division and making it into the playoffs here. A handful of things that we could talk about here with this one. It's a divisional matchup. You got some individual accolades on the line, and then, of course, a playoff berth here for Tampa, which really beat up the Saints when they played them earlier this season. It's just not a good year for New Orleans. Where's your storyline here with this game?
Yeah, it has to start. I'm going to start with the low-hanging fruit, and it has to start with Mike Evans.
Let's go.
Has the last
85 yards. Let's go.
85 yards, Trev. 85 yards for his 11th consecutive NFL season with 1,000 passing or receiving yards. I can talk today.
He looks so good, though.
He looks so good. I mean, I know he got a couple weeks off with the injury, and it's just like, oh, God, okay.
I was saying this to Dalton on the review show. This is the best, most motivated, focused Mike Evans has looked, in my opinion, in years. And again, I don't know if it's because, like you said, his whole body has had the chance to rest with the amount of time that he missed from the hamstring injury, but he looks like he's got more juice. He's willing to go over the middle of the field a little bit more, run more of the Chris Godwin routes, have those yards after catch. I mean, obviously, the touchdown that he's plucking out of midair just with so much strength and confidence. This is the best I think Mike Evans has looked in years. So I think that's saying a lot for him.
It's so interesting, too, because I think it's just kind of a case study in, I guess you can just say interpersonal relationships, because Mike Evans looked phenomenal when Tom Brady got to Tampa. Did such a 180 just in the way that he worked and the way that he worked on his body and all of that kind of stuff. He didn't want to let Tom down. He was terrified of that. All of the guys were absolutely terrified.
I am. I've never even met the guy.
Exactly. You don't want to disappoint Tom Brady. And that's something that they took to heart. But I would say that Mike Evans is just as terrified of letting Baker Mayfield down, but for completely different reasons and in completely different ways. Tom Brady and Baker Mayfield lead in completely different ways, but the result is the same, is that their players want to play for them. And in Baker's case, Mike said it that Baker said it. Baker was like, I'm probably thinking about this record for Mike Evans, getting him to 1,000 yards more than Mike is. And having that guy in the locker room, having that guy as your support system, you don't want to let him down if he cares more about your record than you do. So you know that Baker Mayfield is going to feed this ball to Mike Evans. This is a total collective effort when you talk about Baker Mayfield, you talk about Liam Cohen designing the game plan in a way that can still isolate Mike Evans as much as possible. So my matchup that matters is whoever is covering Mike Evans. Now, we don't get the benefit of the Marshawn Lattimore, Mike Evans, back and forth and rivalry anymore, but Kool-Aid McKinstry, Alontae Taylor, who's going to be the one that's going to be tasked with, are you going to shadow Mike Evans? Are you going to, use different things? You're going to try and take him out of the game in any way you possibly can, but come hell or high water, Baker Mayfield is going to throw that ball to Mike Evans. So that's all that matters in this game when you're talking offensively, and how quickly can you get that record perhaps and not have to worry about it the rest of the way as well. You don't want to leave it till, the last second or the last minute or whatever, unless you're up by a lot. I mean, there's motivation there as well. It's going to be very, very interesting. 85 yards, so doable.
Yeah, and I think this is absolutely a matchup that matters. Not to make this entire segment about Mike Evans, but it kind of is, because Tampa should win this game, right? I mean, they absolutely kicked the crap out of them when they played New Orleans earlier this season. They scored 51 points. Sean Tucker had over 136 rushing yards. I mean, it wasn't quite the Bucky Irving show yet, but Bucky had 81 yards himself. And so this team knows how to beat New Orleans, and Spencer Rattler was starting in that game. Spencer Rattler starting again, and Rattler hasn't played very well. I'll get to that in a second. Really, the way that Tampa could sort of make this a game here is if they focus too much on the Mike Evans record, right? If it's just starting to force feed him, and if the Saints go into this game plan and saying like, okay, we're going to shut down Mike Evans because we know that's where they're going to pass the football. And if there's too many incompletions, maybe a couple turnovers here and there, like that's how you keep New Orleans in this game. Because remember, this is a team that even when they don't have a ton to play for, they hate Tampa. Tampa hates them.
Sure do.
This is a big time rivalry. And last year, the Bucs had a chance to secure the division against the Saints in Week 17 at Raymond James Stadium, sort of like they do this year.
Yep.
And New Orleans beat them. And they loved playing spoiler in that game. I don't know if it's better or worse that Marshawn Lattimore is not in this game anymore, because for Bucs fans and maybe for Mike Evans, maybe he wishes that he could get the 1,000 against Marshawn Lattimore.
Marshawn Lattimore, yeah, you're right.
But on the flip side, Marshawn Lattimore might piss Mike Evans off so much that maybe they fight and he gets thrown out of the game before he gets his 85th receiving yard. So I don't think it's a guarantee. I think the Saints are just as aware of what's at stake as Mike Evans and the Buccaneers are. And I think that if you're too focused on making that happen, this game might be a little closer than you want it to be going into the fourth quarter, because I think Mike would tell you, he'd rather make the playoffs and have a chance to make a deep playoff run than get the 1,000 yards. So I think that that's where the team's heads are at. But the plus factor in this one to me is Spencer Rattler, because he's got to be able to play more efficient, or again, sort of like we talked about with Cleveland and the Baltimore Ravens. If he doesn't, it could be a runaway train. Spencer Rattler, 243 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception versus the Buccaneers when they played earlier this season. But over the last 3 weeks, 43.3 passing grade for Rattler, 4 big-time throws, 7 turnover-worthy plays. And so it's been a struggling month for the Bucs secondary, but Spencer Rattler has been one to put the ball in harm's way. And so this with all due respect, I like Rattler coming out of the draft. Thought he was underdrafted when he was in the 5th round. If he carves you up a little bit here, you got to be very worried about the Buccaneers going into the playoffs, because there's some really good passing offenses that they will have to face, whether it's in the wild card round, divisional round, wherever they are at. So if they don't really shore things up this week, I'd be worried about this team heading into the playoffs.
For sure. And I think that honestly, the best of both worlds and the best case scenario for the Buccaneers is you don't worry about Mike Evans' record right away, and you just get up so high that then it doesn't matter anymore. And you're basically dealing with garbage time trying to get Mike Evans the record. You get him and whatever. But I like that you pointed out already how Sean Tucker did against the New Orleans Saints last go around, because there was a very interesting stat from NGS that I saw this week. Buccaneers recorded 10 explosive runs and 92 rushing yards over expectation against Carolina, both of which were their most in a game since at least 2018. Sean Tucker led the backfield with 136 rushing yards, 6 explosive runs on 14 carries, 10 of which resulted in a successful game. So this is a guy that I love Bucky. I adore Bucky. I am part of the Bucky Irving hive. I will buy anything that you're selling when it comes to Bucky Irving. However, Sean Tucker, he's a really fun back that they don't get to utilize that often now that it's become the Bucky Irving show. But this is a guy that did really well against the Saints last time around. He did really well against the Carolina Panthers, albeit most of it was when they were already up and just kind of beating up on Carolina. But I would love to see that again with the New Orleans Saints. And I would, again, love to see this game be put away early and go into the postseason without those concerns that you're talking about. Defensively, you're dealing with injuries, all that kind of stuff. I get it. But you proved against the Carolina Panthers last week that you can go out and you can dominate your division teams. You have every incentive to do so if you're the Buccaneers heading into the postseason. Most importantly, it's what gets you into the postseason.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure you like and subscribe the video. And if you don't have a PFF Plus subscription, you can get one to see all the premium stats that we talked about here on the show, plus the expert betting and fantasy advice over at subscribe.pff.com. The description is also right below. So if you are not a PFF Plus subscriber, you can become one today.